I'm going to put it right in where the paper goes. And you need to have the paper guides right up against the cloth paper sandwich, because if you don't, it tends to go crooked when it goes in, and then you get a paper jam. Now, when I print on fabric, I go into the print menu, and I want to go to properties. And this will probably be different on different printers, but you always have some version of this. My choices are draft, text, text and image, photo, or best photo. So for printing on fabric, I'm going to choose best photo, and I'm just going to choose plain paper. And I'm going to send it through. I'm going to print a couple more pictures. Check the setting. Yep, that's okay. Okay, this is the one that I printed out on the fabric that I had prepared, and I never try to use the whole space. I always leave a pretty good margin, and sometimes I pick up a little bit of black ink when it goes through, but I've never had it affect the picture. The picture usually comes out fine. And what I've tried to do is resize all of them so they're about 7 inches tall by 6 inches wide. So here is the next picture that I printed. And as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that is really too dark. It doesn't have the same quality that the previous pictures had. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop Elements, and I'm going to lighten this picture up and print it again. So I'm going into Enhance, and I'm going to go to Adjust Lighting, and you have a couple of choices there. I am going to use the Levels tool, and I'm going to make the whole thing lighter, but then I want to bring the shadows back up just a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to go back into Enhance, and this time I'm going to go to Adjust Color and adjust Hue and Saturation, and I'm going to lighten the whole thing up a bit, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit cooler, but I don't think I could do it in this tool. So I'm going to leave it like that. And I'm going to go back to Enhance, Adjust Color, Color Variations. And wait while it loads. And this time I'm going to lighten it a little bit, and I'm going to increase the blue a little bit and see what happens. I'm not sure, but we're going to print it out and see what it looks like. So I say OK, and there's my picture. Looks kind of washed out, doesn't it? So I'm going to try one more thing, which is go back to Adjust Lighting, but this time I'm going to Brightness Contrast, and I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit and increase the brightness a little bit. No, don't like that. Okay, we'll just bring up the contrast just a little. Okay. Now we're going to see what that looks like. I think I certainly have a better print for my purposes for this quilt. It's much lighter. I've taken away the really orange tint, and I think that it's going to work okay with my other images. Now, there's one more thing that I could try on this one. I can take out the background and put in a light colored background and see if I like that. And that actually speaks to something I wanted to show you next, which is copying from the 3-in-1 directly onto the fabric from your photos, and the things that you can do with that particular technique. I'm printing a copy of that picture that I just did on cloth on a piece of paper, and what I'm going to do now is just cut it out, and I'm going to put a plain, or at least a light colored background in back of him. The only tricky part about this one is that his hair is a little bit messed up, so I have to be a little careful about how I cut. There's my image. I'm going to put it down first. This is the original picture, and I think we did improve the color in our copy here. So I'm going to put it down, and then put a piece of white paper in back of it, and we'll give that a try. So this is Kona cotton, and seems to have a nice weight. Get rid of the little fuzzies on it, and we should be ready to go. If you have things like threads on top of your cloth before you print, what will happen is that it'll go ahead and print that, and when you pull the thread off later, you'll have a little white line on your print. Since I'm copying at this point, I want to go into my 3-in-1 controls and set the quality at that on the machine rather than in the computer. At any rate, it does show you that it's possible to just make a print of your image, cut out the background, and give yourself a different background. So you can see that there are lots of possibilities. When you use a 3-in-1 to copy onto fabric, I wanted to show you the difference. This is a printout that I made from my computer on a piece of paper. I copied it, and this was on an HP. And this was the density that I finally liked. If I played around with it a little bit more, maybe I could have gotten it, because the original is just a little bit darker than the one that I got on fabric. But what I wanted to show you was one that I printed darker, and this, so you can see it's quite a difference. It's worth playing around with the density a little bit to get it just the way you want it. I have one more example that I did on that same printer. This was the first one I got, and I thought, well, that's okay, but I'm going to try it a little bit darker. And then this is the second one I got, which is a much livelier, better print. And both of these were copied from a full-size photograph right on the HP. If you're using the copier, you can copy real objects instead of just pictures or instead of fabric. These are some feathers. You can print directly on fabric from real flowers right on your scanner. And I'm going to make a fabric print out of buttons. And just make a design that could be an overall design for a piece of fabric to use for sashing or to use in the background. And I'm going to copy this directly onto fabric. Do a color copy and see what we get. Cloning fabric is a useful thing to know how to do if you run out of fabric and just need a little bit more. I have to tell you though that it's not really ethical for you to reproduce commercial fabrics that you could just go out and buy. Here are some samples of printed fabrics. It's all from this one sample that I was working for, and I cloned them on the copier, and I also scanned them and put them into my Photoshop Elements software. So I'm going to show you the different effects that you get from different printers. This is the piece of fabric that I've been using to do the samples for cloning. And there are a couple of things I want to show you. One is that you get a different copy on every machine. This one was done on an HP with dye-based ink. This one was done on an Epson. And this one was done on a different Epson. So we've got completely different results. The one that worked best for this particular piece was this one, which was printed on an Epson printer with pigment ink. And I went into the copy controls and picked out the best setting and increased the density a little bit. And it's also especially useful if you want to repair old quilts. So here's a piece that needs to be replaced. The hole's actually big enough that the stuffing's coming out, and I'll have to find a way to fix that when I put the new fabric on. Since I couldn't use this piece to copy from, I picked another piece. So this piece is from the same fabric, and I scanned this, enlarged it a little bit in Photoshop, and took out the color all around it, and I'm going to print that out on a piece of cotton, and I can use that to replace the piece that was damaged. Okay, so I've got a black and white picture here, and I want to put color in it. So the first thing I have to do is go in and change it from a grayscale picture to a color picture. And as soon as I get that done, then I'll be able to go in and put the colors into it. So now that I've made the file a color file, I'm going to go into Enhance, Color, and go to Hue and Saturation. And there is this great little box down here marked Colorize. And now I have color in my picture, but maybe not exactly the color I want. So now I go into Hue, and I can just kind of play around and look for the color I want. And I don't think I want him to be green. There we go. So I'm looking for just kind of a sepia color, and I like that. So, okay, we got that. So now I'm going to go to a tool called the Magnetic Lasso tool, and I'm going to cut the figure of the baby out, and it does part of it kind of automatically, and then you have to click sometimes to make sure that you're getting exactly what you want. And it just follows the outlines where things are a different color, or not in this case a different density. Now around the ear it's a little hard to tell, so I'm going to make a bunch of clicks to make sure I get the ear. And then when we come down here, the contrast is pretty great, so I don't have to worry. The tool's going to do the work for me. And now I'm going to go across the bottom, and when I get back over to where I started, there, the baby's figure is cut out. So I've isolated the figure of the baby now, but it's actually the background that I want to change. So I'm going to go up to Select, and I'm going to go to Inverse, and now it's selected the whole background, but the baby is not selected. Now I can go back into Color and change the hue of the background, so I can make it blue or purple or whatever I want. And I think I'm going to do a kind of a bluish green color in the background. Okay, there we go. And I have no idea. There we go. All right. Now if I go back to Select and say Deselect, it takes away everything, and I've got my picture. I am probably going to need to go in and clean up a few of these little spots where I haven't gotten exactly what I wanted, but basically it looks pretty good. And now I've got the image for the middle of my little memory quilt.